Here we are at Tony Robbins' very famous TED Talk, one of the most watched videos on YouTube. This is towards the end of that talk. To set the scene, in the audience are luminaries and visionaries, world leaders, business leaders, and Tony's been delivering a presentation around values, around how to create fulfillment in life, not just success. He's coming up to the end of the talk. Now, one of the things that's important about a TED Talk is that you've got to finish on time. The talk goes around 20 minutes or so. And Tony Robbins, let's be known, is, he has a bit of a reputation for going over. Sometimes he finishes seminars at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. So for Tony to keep to time is pretty tough. But he does a great and masterful job here. Towards the end, he finishes his 20-minute speech with a story. If you're doing a keynote presentation, a great way to finish on a high is with a really impactful, heart-rendering story, which is what Tony does here. I'll pause the action every now and again to commentate on just a few things that Tony's doing. Here we go.
9/11 happened, and I'll finish with this. I was in Hawaii. I was with 2,000 people from 45 countries. We were translating 4 languages simultaneously for a program that I was conducting for a week. The night before was called Emotional Mastery.
Tony here is rushed for time because the 20 minutes is fast approaching for the end of the presentation. So he's going faster than he would normally go. However, what he's doing here, just very quickly, is setting the scene for this story. We know it's taking place where 9/11 happened, and it's happened in Hawaii. He's talking about where he is and what's taking place. The audience need a bucket to hold information in, so he needs to build a scene, otherwise it'll be difficult for them to follow if they don't know where they are in time and space. That's what he just did in that last piece.
I got up, had no plan for this, and I said, we had all this fireworks, I do crazy shit, fun stuff. And then at the end I stopped, and I had this plan I was gonna say, but I never do what I'm gonna say. And all of a sudden I said, when do people really start to live? When they face death.
Tony here switches from narration, setting up the scene, to dialogue, what actually happened in that scene. The mistake most speakers make is they narrate their entire story. What you must do is take the audience into that scene by letting them discover and hear the dialogue that took place. So Tony tells us what he thought and what he said when he was on stage.
And then I went through this whole thing about if you were gonna get off this island, if 9 days from now you were gonna die, who would you call, what would you say, what would you do?
Tony again continues using dialogue. And he uses questions as well. The point about this is, when it's a great story and you use dialogue, the audience automatically think as if they were there. And that problem that he posed for that audience in 9/11 in Hawaii, it's almost like the same question has now been posed to them. Great stories put the audience into a dilemma and get them to make decisions from inside it. And those decisions should be then based on their own principles and values, or in Tony's case, their human needs. In this case, the story acts as an example for what would you do if you faced that same situation. I can remember a time in Titanic where this took place. In the movie Titanic, you may remember there's a scene where some survivors, some people have got out into the lifeboats, and you see an establishing shot from the side where you see the boat in the distance, them getting away from the Titanic. And the next scene we see is them, it's as if we're in the boat with them. And there's a debate taking place in that. Boat. And the debate is, should we go and save the other people who are drowning all around us and dying of hypothermia in the waters of the North Atlantic Ocean? And there's a debate taking place. Some people want to go back and save. Some people say, no, we must stay safe. We must save ourselves. And the point is, because you are in that boat, because you're there with them, the camera work puts you in that boat, you automatically feel like you were there. And you are posed with the same problem. And the question you have to ask yourself is, now what would I do? And it tests out our principles and our beliefs and our values and our human needs. And that's exactly the point that Tony's making.
Well, that night is when 9/11 happened. One woman had come to the seminar, and when she came there, her previous boyfriend had been kidnapped and murdered.
Tony jumps back into narration quickly to set the scene on what happened on that morning. But now he's going to subtly shift back into dialogue to keep it interesting, so we can hear the thoughts and hear the voices of the characters in that particular scene.
Her friend, or new boyfriend, wanted to marry her, and she said no. He said, if you leave and go to that Hawaii thing, it's over with us. She said it's over. When I finished that night, she called him and left a message, true story, at the top of the World Trade Center where he worked, saying, honey, I love you. I just want you to know, I want to marry you. It was stupid of me.
Tony jumps back into dialogue and becomes the character of the boyfriend. It's important that we hear him speak because he's a main character, and main characters need to be heard in the story. Otherwise, Tony has to narrate the whole thing, and it will come across much more boring and flat. But now we got characters, it brings it to life because it happens now. Dialogue is always happening now, meaning it's present tense. Narration is always past tense. And the ability to go between narration and dialogue is key in a story.
She was asleep because it was 3 a.m. for us when he called her back from the top and said, honey, I can't tell you what this means. He said, I don't know how to tell you this, but you give me the greatest gift because I'm going to die. And she played the recording for us in the room. She was on Larry King later. And he said, you're probably wondering how on earth this could happen to you twice. And he said, all I can say to you is, this must be God's message to you, honey. From now on, every day, give your all, love your all. Don't let anything ever stop you.
Tony's words here of give your all, love fully. All those words, even though they're said between two characters in the story, the audience will hear them as messages to them, that they should live fully, that they should be loving fully in every moment, squeezing the juice out of every day. They will take it on board as if it's an instruction, even though it's hidden and embedded within the story. That's the beauty of stories, because you can sell, you can influence, you can create and change beliefs in a story without the audience really knowing that that's what's taking place. That's the art of great storytelling, to influence people.
She finishes, and a man stands up and he says, I'm from Pakistan, I'm a Muslim, I'd love to hold your hand and say I'm sorry, but frankly, this is retribution. I can't tell you the rest because I'm out of time. Are you sure?
Finish the story.
Tony is extraordinarily playful here, but also very highly intelligent. He has no doubt been grilled a number of times before doing this TED Talk. Look, you can't go over. You've got to keep to time because Tony's known for going over on time. So what he does here is tells this story and ends it at the very moment where there's a cliffhanger. And that thing of incompleteness is something that most people can't deal with. They need to know the end of something. Incompleteness is a great way to engage curiosity in your audience. It's called also an open loop. And Tony does it artfully here because he always knew he'd end up telling the story, but he's being respectful because that's when the 20-minute clock is. It's probably around 20, 21 minutes at this point, but he knows really that the audience will want to hear the rest of the story and he'll get to tell it. Very clever.
10 seconds. 10 seconds. No, I want to be respectful. 10 seconds. All I can tell you is I brought this man on stage with a man from New York who worked in the World Trade Center because I had about 200 New Yorkers there. More than 50 lost their entire companies, their friends, marking off their Palm Pilots. One financial trader, this woman made of steel, bawling. 30 friends crossing off that all died. And what I did to people is said, what are we going to focus on? What does this mean, and what are we going to do?
Tony ties this part of the story back to some content delivered in his talk just a few minutes previously. Therefore, this story is now acting like an anecdotal story, a real-life example of that strategy or tactic or teaching in action through this story.
And I took the group and got people to focus on, if you didn't lose somebody today, your focus could be how to serve somebody else. There are people, the woman got him, she was so angry and screaming and yelling. Then I found she wasn't from New York, she's not an American, she doesn't know anybody here. I said, you always get angry. She said, yes. Guilty people got guilty, sad people got sad. And I took these two men and did what I call an indirect negotiation. Jewish man with family in the occupied territory, some New York who would have died if he was at work that day. And this man who wanted to be a terrorist and made it very clear. And the integration that happened is on a film, which I'll be happy to send you. So you can really see what actually happens instead of my verbalization of it.
By offering the audience a free gift, Tony's deepening their relationship with him. Not only will he be offering a gift which they'll feel like want to reciprocate, he may potentially also get a chance to work with those people or for them to be more exposed to his kind of work. That's a very good strategy. I don't think he did it deliberately. I think it probably just came out. But it might be something you want to consider doing when you're doing a keynote presentation and you want to deepen the relationship with the audience and maybe get contact details, but you're not directly selling.
But the two of them not only came together and changed their beliefs and models of the world, but they've worked together to bring, for almost 4 years now, to various mosques and synagogues, the idea of how to create peace. And he wrote a book, which is called My Jihad, My Way of Peace.
Every story is broken up into 3 acts. Act 1 establishes a problem. Act 2 is the search to solve that problem, but not initially finding it. And Act 3 is about the battle and the breakthrough, and therefore the transformation. This part was Act 3.
So transformation can happen. So my invitation to you is this.
Tony is now finishing the story with a call to action, something to get the audience to do. Otherwise, his message will be lost unless they act upon it.
Explore your web, the web in here. The needs, the beliefs, the emotions that are controlling you, for 2 reasons. So there's more of you to give. Achieve too. We all want to do it, but I mean give, because that's what's going to fill you up. And secondly, so you can appreciate, not just understand, that's intellectual, that's mind, but appreciate what's driving other people. It's the only way our world's going to change. God bless you. Thank you. I hope this will serve.
Tony Robbins.